Hello and
Hello.
good morning. My name is Catherine Bischoff, and I'm coming to you from Factory Berlin. We've partnered with Google for Startups during International Women's Month because we've identified, as have many others, that there is an issue with the German startup ecosystem specifically focused on women. The too few women are starting companies. And so what we want to do is analyze the situation, talk to journalists and founders this week, and see how we can break through this cycle. Factory Berlin is an ecosystem of over 4,000 members from 70 different nationalities, very interdisciplinary, from 12 years old to 65. And what we do is we bring these individuals together to co-create, design the future, and really empower them to see and see what a different and future world could look like. We are inherently interested in getting more women into technology, designing and executing programs that support female and underrepresented founders, and showcasing role models. So it is actually the best segue to what we're going to be talking about this morning, later today, and tomorrow with some of these outstanding journalists and founders. And I'm going to pass it on to my friend Myra Frank from Google for Startups. And I'm really looking forward to all the great discussions in the next few days. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Catherine, and hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us on this Tuesday morning. I'm Myra. I lead marketing at Google for Startups. And as we all know, we're here because yesterday was International Women's Day. And also kudos for everyone in Berlin and for Berlin, the state itself, for making this a public holiday. We appreciate it and the recognition that this day deserves as well. And Catherine mentioned it, but we didn't just want to take this one day, but instead take kind of a whole week to honor all these amazing women out there. And that's why we decided to team up with both, our dear partner, Factory Berlin, and thanks for hosting us here today, and also the Grow with Google team to curate kind of a week-long agenda full of super women awesomeness. So I hope you get to see not only this talk, but a couple of those more amazing sessions. At Google for Startups, similar to what Catherine just described with Factory, and our mission is also really core to our mission to support diversity, equity, and inclusion in the startup ecosystem. And therefore, we champion and support women founders. And this is very close to our heart because there's still a lot to do to get to true equality in the startup ecosystem. However, we wouldn't obviously be Google if we wouldn't take a good look into the data first. Therefore, we partnered up with Handelsblatt Research Institute to publish the 2021 Germany Female Founders Nation report, which was in fact just published in February at the WirtschaftsWoche Gründerzeit event. Some of you have probably attended that as well. It was a good event. And today we'll take a bit closer look into this data, and we want to really deep dive a bit into some aspects of it because it's super interesting, and we have a great lineup and group of people to talk about it. So with the data, there's no one who knows the data and interpretation thereof better than Julia Ehlert-Hoschmann. She's the senior economist for Handelsblatt Research Institute and is responsible for economic studies and reports. She's also the author of this very precious report on the state of female founders in Germany, and she will take us through some of the key findings in just a moment. And right after, we'll be joined by three of the amazing founders who have been interviewed for the report. So we have Maria-Lisa Burkhardt, Dr. Vivian Dollinger, and Christina Burkhardt with us today. And we will chat a bit more about the findings, especially about the challenges, the opportunities for women founders in Germany, and about the importance of role models. So stay tuned for the panel right after the deep dive into the data. And with that, I'm handing over to Julia.
Yeah, thanks, Myra, for introducing me. And also, hello, everybody from my side. I'm very excited and really grateful that I was invited to this wonderful event and with this important topic. And I try to share my screen now so you can all see the data. So as you said, the Handelsblatt Research Institute and Google for Startups published a report together dealing with female founders in Germany as part of the initiative Gründerzeit from the WirtschaftsWoche, which was published last week. And now I'm delighted to show you some quick insights of the results of the report. So well known, Germany isn't a founders nation, but Germany is certainly also not a female founders nation. When it comes to female entrepreneurship, Germany still has a long way to go. So only every third founder person in Germany is a woman, and in the digital sector, it is only every sixth person. So to analyze the reasons, we wanted to provide a comprehensive look on the complete spectrum of female founders. And because the female entrepreneurship landscape is very diverse and women start companies in different areas and industries and with different starting situations and conditions. And so for the report, we identified different archetypes of female founders and looked beyond as a narrow segment of only tech startups, but to include all women-led businesses also from other areas and with other conditions to derive individual and tailor-made possible solutions. In order to classify the different archetypes of female founders, we used a mix of qualitative and quantitative approaches. Therefore, we conducted a survey among female and male founders first. And afterwards, we conducted 7 interviews with female founders from different areas and with different conditions. And I say thank you again for all the interviewers who participated in our research and in our interviews, who we will see later on. Furthermore, we analyzed data from the data platform Dealroom, and we also included further relevant studies in our research. And after we conducted a cluster analysis and classified 6 different types of female founders. Of course, these types doesn't cover the whole spectrum of female founders, but they include the main characteristics and they illustrate the heterogeneous spectrum of female founders. So I will shortly introduce the 6 different types we analyzed, just to give a short overview. First, we have the transforming knowledge carrier, who pushes the digitization in her specialized area through a successful startup. She's most of the time between the ages of 20 and 39 and received an above average education. And she's keen to find fulfillment in her work. So in our survey, young female founders state over proportionally that a lack of access to capital and consultation was one of their key challenges. And this is specifically a problem as startups are very growth oriented and rely on capital. So this was for these types, this was the most important or the main problem. Next, we identified the experienced part-time experimenter. So in English, the classifications sound even maybe a little bit strange. We try to translate it in the best way. She starts her business while still holding a full-time job. She's on average between 40 and 49 years old and has already gained extensive professional experience in her life. And she's often a mother of a young or minor child. And our survey shows that almost half of all female founders run their business part-time, and women start their business even more often in part-time than men do. Female part-time founders are more risk-averse than other founders in our studies, so they also state over proportionally that the fear of failure was one of the main obstacles, and therefore they often start part-time while still holding a full-time job, and maybe to test their business model first before going then full in the market. Our third type of female founder is the young master craftsman. She earned the important craft of her independent business during her apprenticeship. She's relatively young, between the ages of 20 and 29, and typically runs through the career path of vocational training, assistant, master, and in the end, founder or acquisitioner of a crafts business. And data shows that every 4th foundation of a crafts business is from a woman. However, the share is very different in various jobs and areas of crafts business. And the master craftsmen start a business mostly because of a fulfilling work. And furthermore, what's interesting, they start their business relatively young and childless, but starts a family more often during their entrepreneurship than other founders do. And then they appreciate the freedom of more flexible working hours and being their own boss. So this was an answer that was stated over proportionately compared to the other female founders. Furthermore, we have the out of necessity inventor. She starts her company as a result of unemployment. She's between the age of 30 and 39 and mostly has a vocational education. And our survey shows that every fourth woman and every fifth man starts its business as a result of unemployment. So this is quite a high number and a big share of all female founders. It's interesting that 65% of them are inspired by an already existing startup idea, and that the unemployment was then the crucial impulse to start a business. So it was not just completely out of mind, but they had a plan before. But like a crucial impulse was missing in the end. And our survey shows furthermore that in particular the fear of failure and missing role models were key challenges for them to start their business. So we think it's very important that potential founders are reached beforehand and are encouraged to start a business so that they avoid the situation of starting a business over hasty and without a fully developed business plan or a lack of capital. Next, we identified the new space creating pioneer. She starts a business in a special life situation, usually during or after parental leave. She's between 30 and 39 years old and mostly a mother of a young child under the age of 3. And our survey shows that every 8th woman or female founder starts her business in a special life situation. Here we can highlight that these kind of founders often start a business because of a good business idea. So our survey shows that these pioneers preferably start their businesses in the education space and in the service industry, and with their experience as a young mother then often develop services for families or children. And last but not least, we have the experienced self-made maker who benefits from her huge experience and knowledge. She's a little older, between 50 and 59 years old, and has often founded another business before. And our survey shows that 20% of women have founded more than once and 30% of men. And here we see that experienced female founders are able to use a broad range of capital sources. So they don't need to use their own savings as often as other founders do. And they receive over proportionally more state funds or crowdfunding capital. And they could also over proportionally make use of all different kinds of sources of support, as we see in our results. So it turns out for us that experience make the differences in the usage of support. And so the question arises whether the design and communication of these support sources have to be shaped more efficiently in order to reach also unexperienced female founders or founders in general. So when we just have a very, very quick overview over our results, we see that the causes for the low share of female founders in Germany are very diverse, and therefore it requires different approaches. And these are social and economic measures on the one hand, and also entrepreneurial corporations and networks. And maybe just to stress a few of them, because we will come to this later, I think, in more detail. But we think that a paradigm shift in society and economy is required to drive long-term change and to increase the share of women founders. Furthermore, childcare must become better and more flexible, and a higher proportion of women in STEM subjects is required. But what is really important, or maybe the most two important things, is that the structural disadvantages to founders by investors should be given greater focus, as especially the startups and those businesses who want to grow fast and big stated or mentioned to us that they have a problem of getting enough capital. And furthermore, there need to be more tailor-made and fitting role models for women. As in our survey, women answered more often than men that there are no suitable role models for them. So we think society, companies, and also the media have to give more visibility to the many successful women and founders and entrepreneurs in order to increase the share of female founders. So this was a very quick overview of our report. Of course, you can download the report as a whole on our website from the Handelsblatt Research Institute for free, with more detailed results of the survey and further infographics. But maybe these results can be like a first teaser and give some food for thoughts in our discussion right now. So thank you very much for giving me the chance to introduce you to our report and the first results. And then I give back to Myra.
Thanks, Julia. And please don't go anywhere. We still need you to to analyze some of this data that you shared. So thank you very much for walking us through the findings. And I think I said that before, the reason what I love so much about this approach and the report versus many other reports that are out there is that it's really giving you a holistic picture of kind of the female entrepreneurial landscape, so it doesn't just look at tech founders or startup founders or, small business entrepreneurs, but it really gives you a holistic view. So that's super exciting that we are able to dive into that a bit more today. But we won't do this alone. As mentioned, we'll have some great panelists that we invited to join us for the conversation. And to everyone who's watching, please add your questions. We take questions. There will be a Q&A in the end. So please feel free to already share any questions you have in the comments of the live stream, and we will make sure to address them as we go in the Q&A. So before our finalists join, I will actually do a little bit of an intro for each of them and for our audience as well. So with that, we have first, we have Christina Burkhardt, who is the founder of the Shift School for Digital Transformation and the 21st Century Shift Shape Club. I'm curious to hear a bit more about that. The Shift School educates digital change makers from all industries, ages, and backgrounds to become digital transformation managers. As a powerhouse entrepreneur and mom of three, in her own words, wild girls, Christina is committed to paving the way for women entrepreneurs and creating more visibility for women in the digital economy. That's fantastic to hear. So welcome, Christina. I hope we can bring her up here. Hi.
Hello.
Then over to, hi, Christina. Hi, over to Vivian. Dr. Vivian Dollinger has spent 15 years scaling and leading teams in the mobile and gaming industries. Vivian has co-founded ObjectBox, which is a deep tech company that enables edge computing and IoT in mobile. Vivian is committed to passing on her coding skills and the belief that women can do anything onto her daughter. And hopefully to everyone who's watching here today as well. Good to have you, Vivian.
Hi.
And last but not least, we have Maria Lisa Burkhardt here with us today, dialed in from a car, curious to hear where you're going. This is Founder Life right there. Maria is the CCO and co-founder of Skin, where she is on a mission to put the power of choice into the hands of cosmetic consumers. And Skin does exactly that. It's an AI-powered app that personalizes the complex world of beauty products. In her own words, Maria is a multi-hyphenate. I hope I'm saying it correctly. She's a founder, CCO, electrical engineer, consultant, mom, and a business development specialist with extensive experience in digital transformation. So there's a lot going on. We're excited to deep dive a bit more into that. So thanks, Maria, and welcome on the panel. And I hope you can hear us. So I think, given Julia, you outlined all those different, founder types and archetypes, and that's really, super interesting. I think what I'd love to start on is to get a better idea for, when you created the report and you looked across, the more holistic landscape of women entrepreneurs, and can you walk us a little bit through your process as a researcher? How did you identify these archetypes? And I'm also curious to hear, at what point does like a cluster of characteristics become an actual cluster? And how did you go about identifying those archetypes?
And yeah, it was also for us quite an interesting process, more or less, because in the beginning we didn't know what will be the results of our study, and especially our survey was the main approach to classify these different archetypes. We identified, maybe it was a little short in my presentation in one slide, we identified different features for which we classified the different archetypes. It was especially the family situation, whether they found part-time or full-time, and some other different features. And then we run a cluster analysis. And so in the end, the data showed us the different archetypes. But for us, it was interesting. I mean, there are a lot of reports, but to have really these different kind of clusters, because we think that sometimes in the media, everything is a little concentrated on the typical startup, which is really important and a big and huge share of female founders. But there are also so many other different founders out there. And especially they said also in our survey that missing role models were a problem, that they are not so present. So then in the end, we find it really interesting that the data showed like how diverse the different archetypes are when we compare it to specific features.
Yeah, and I think you brought a very important point up there, and we will dive into role models and the importance of role models in a bit. But first, I'm really curious to see how well Julia actually nailed it in the report. So question to the founders here, did you recognize yourself in your respective archetype described in the report? Maybe starting with Vivian, or what are your thoughts, and how do you maybe see yourself as a founder if you would describe yourself?
Well, yeah, I think I roughly, of course, can only be rough, fall into the new space creating, was that the right category? Really founder type. So a lot of the criteria match my story. Yeah, I think it was actually quite well done. And I do believe that because I have a lot of moms here, and it was a big qualifier in your criteria, right? Like the maybe after some parental leave, making that choice, or having not small children. And I do think it makes a big difference, maybe more for women than men, which I do believe it is a really great criteria to place the female founders into these categories, because of course being a founder is like it's your life, right? It's not a day job, and having kids is not a day job. So there all needs to be a flow, and I think that makes a very big difference to maybe male founders a bit still, because in these days I think childcare lies still a little bit more with the women than with the men.
I think that's a very interesting aspect you're bringing up, and I actually noted this as a question a bit further down, but maybe we dive into it now. So there are two facts actually that I found that unite all three of the founders that we have represented here today. One you already mentioned, Vivian, you're all moms. And the other interesting fact is actually that you all found your businesses with your respective partners, which is something that I find quite interesting, and something I would love to dive a bit more into. But maybe starting with the aspect of motherhood, and also, Christina, I think, you all mentioned it individually in your bios, that you're a mom of 3 wild girls. I feel like everyone had like a note or, a side note in it. I have to say, I was actually, debating a little bit whether I should add that aspect into the intro that I would give you, because it's always an interesting conversation to have. It's like that many women founders are, that is always something you mention with them, while for male founders, it doesn't seem to be that front of mind. But on the other hand, I feel like also, since you proactively also added to your bias, and it seems to be obviously something that defines you, and you already said it quite nicely, Vivian, that it is, you're not only this one role or the other. So I'm curious, Christina, maybe, can you kind of describe, how, maybe also coming from that archetypes, whether you found yourself in it, and how much of being a mother defines you also as a founder?
Yes. Well, when I read the report, because we didn't see like the archetypes before, I only saw it, like being the role model for this archetype, I was really laughing so badly, because I thought, it's like, that's me. I mean, it was really, I don't know, Julia, how you did it. Were you like looking for those things afterwards? But it was like, okay, everything that's written here, it's me. That's completely true. And because I was I think 36, it was my 3rd child, I was in parental leave, I wanted to have like, you had a cool name, it was like the new space creating pioneer. I never knew I'm identifying as a new space creating pioneer, but I like it. I was looking for how to to get everything together, like the family, the children, like we had 3 of them, like working full time. I worked full time before, and I was kind of looking for something new. And I think a lot of people like in this parental leave are doing. So that really cool. It was really, I think I fit perfectly in there. And regarding the children, but I think, yeah, it's basically that's what is also part of your life. I mean, it's different, and you have some constraints and also some really good things about it. You learn a lot, and then that's what kind of is part of your life. And that's why shouldn't I say I'm a mom of 3 and I'm a founder? Yeah, but which I would say it's a part of me, but it doesn't mean that it makes a difference between me and other founders and other people. It's a part of me.
Yeah, and a very important one, right? I'm curious, like when you compare your bios to your partners or co-founders' bios, like how does that compare? Is that something that you would say you position equally?
I think so, but as when you mentioned, yeah, I'm not sure if Tobias, my husband, if he says, well, I'm a dad of 3. But I think if you look at our website, I think he wrote down that he's doing a lot with his daughters. So I think it's really important for him as well. But no one asks him about that. It's not only like, I think he's like saying, yeah, I'm a dad of 3, but people are not so much interested in that. Like, he's the founder, he's the guy, and that's fine, children or not. Yeah.
And Vivian, how's that for you? I'm also curious, like maybe this is a good segue into the second question that I had in terms of like starting a company with your partner. Like, is that would you recommend that to anyone, or is it a horrible idea, or what are your maybe some insights into that of yours?
Well, I think it's interesting that actually it's for the same for all 3 of us, because there's like, as with everything, advantages and disadvantages. But I do believe that with regards to this whole balancing everything, being as founders and life partners together, it's easier maybe sometimes to understand each other and to balance things out, especially with kids, because you can't plan kids, like what they do, what's happening, if they will be, if things are going well, if they sleep, if they're sick, whatever. And you also can't plan the startup journey really well, right? You have some ideas and you have some goals, but things are happening, like someone calls you and wants to do, out of the blue project with you that's like super interesting, and timing is maybe not like perfect. And if you're like balancing all of this together, of course, you can make it possible. So for example, when I was fundraising, it was totally clear that Marcus needed to take care of basically everything else, because fundraising is a full-time process, and you cannot postpone the email after the call to the next day. It's just not possible. So if you have a full day of meetings, you will have a full night of following up. That's it. And if that's combined with business travel, as was the case for us, it's just like there's no chance you have a lot of time left for anything else if you want to finish that fundraise. So it was clear that I needed to do that, and this needs to be a priority for that time. But now maybe sometimes, if we really need that feature to be released in time, I need to balance more of family life, to give him the freedom and flexibility to get that feature out in time. And that works really well for us, and I see it as a big advantage.
So you support each other and take on different roles as you go through different stages of the process of building and setting up a company, right? So I mean that speaks to how significant support systems are, and maybe bring back a little bit of the data here, Julia. You touched upon that, like how again, many of the women entrepreneur juggling work and life and family and the startup life is something that is top of mind. How do you, from a research and data perspective, what do you identify as like the biggest, and most relevant sources for support for founders, maybe outside of the immediate partner?
What was interesting was that the main answer of source of support was family and friends. Actually, that was for both genders and for all types of female founders. So this was really the most important source of support. What was also quite important was the support of like networks and also state support. That was also really important. And when we compare the different types of founders, then we see that it is more that we see experienced founders received more support and a wide range of support sources than, for example, part-time founders or women who start a business because of unemployment. So it really depends on how much experience you have and how big your support bubble is, more or less.
And maybe bringing back in Maria, welcome back to our round. Maria, we were just talking a bit more about the aspects of, the interesting fact that all founders here that are also, have been included in the report, all, moms, but also founded their business with their respective partners, which I thought was quite an interesting aspect. And we are now kind of moved on to talk a bit more about like support, sources for support throughout your founder journey. And I know you describe your company quite as a Familienunternehmen, like a family business. Can you share a little bit about kind of your journey and how you came about to set up Skin?
Yeah, sure. So sorry at the beginning for the delay, but internet was just not working. So yeah, as you mentioned, we are really a family business. So one of my co-founders is my husband, and my other co-founder, he is one of the closest uncles of our little boy. So we are really like very close in the founders team. And additionally, we try to like add all the values we have in the family also to our team. So it's really about respect, being close, enjoying time together. But what we always took a lot of care to was to build up an advisory board very, very close to us. So everybody's really like acting in the family. So we are going to holidays together. We spend the COVID-19 time together. So we really try to stick together and to go through these times together. So I guess this is not just the idea how we work together. It's also what makes us very strong and the most support we ever had.
That's good to hear. I'd love to dive in a bit more into the aspect of why you all decided to start your own business. I think we're all aware that there's not as that many women founders, and when you look at the overall kind of founder population, we are just below 16% in Germany right now. Even more reason to talk about all the reasons why women should consider starting a business. So I'm curious to hear a bit more about your own personal motivation. And I think we've seen the data that Julia shared as well, and that you can read up in the report. I feel like there's really some really strong aspects there, so I think the top aspects are find fulfillment in your work, followed by the freedom of more flexible working hours, the idea of being your own boss, being inspired by a strong business idea. All those criteria seem to be quite powerful if you can set the terms of your business yourself. I'm curious to hear a bit more, like what was it for you personally that motivated you to start your business, and are those criteria, are any of those top of mind for you? Starting with Christina, maybe.
Sure. I was in a situation that I was working full-time with 3 kids. Then I was in maternal leave, and I knew I couldn't go back to the company. It was clear because they had really difficulties. They were in the energy business, and it was not working really well. So that was the first point. And actually, before, I never thought about starting a company. I didn't have it. I'm 43. I grew up on the countryside. There were no role models. Like, I didn't even know it existed that you could found a company back then. And then I was in this period of transition, let's say, and I did a course at my university, like for mothers who have a university degree, who would like to, go back to work really fast. And we were 25 women, and there was no one actually who was all academics. No one was thinking about starting a company. And I don't know, my husband, actually, he was really much into this digital transformation thing. He was talking about that to me. And I was really interested in that. And education, as we had 3 children, I always thought that the education system is not really well here, so we should change something. And by talking about all those things, suddenly there was this idea of, why don't we do something completely different? Why don't we change like this landscape here with further education, digital transformation? I mean, it was 6 years ago. Now it's like normal,
Right.
but 6 years ago there was nothing for educating people in a new way with a new curriculum. And that was basically, we had the idea because I think you kind of need an idea. And I felt like if I don't do it now, or if we don't do it now, when should we do it then? So, and I have to admit, it was really because I didn't want to go back, have a boss and always feel like the pressure, like, oh, you can never be sick, you can never be home because the children, you know, whenever something is happening with them, which actually was not to blame, like on my bosses. They were super cool, they were always super easy, but it was all made up by myself, like, and this pressure, like you have to function, you cannot take off whenever there's something with the children. And that was combined, all of those things combined, we're like, okay, let's just try it, let's do it, let's create something new and kind of have more flexibility, more room for yourself. That was my story, kind of.
Vivian, does that match what your experience has been in your own journey?
Well, a little bit different because, like, so we had an app agency before together, and we've always wanted to, basically the idea was to cross-finance our own ideas with customer projects, and customer projects always come first, and lots of really, I think, good stuff that, you know, like, I saw that if you don't do the final leap, it's always, you know, your nighttime project, and typically at some time you might not prioritize it enough, and then you see it dropping, and it's not very satisfying. And then during the time, and yes, we had a daughter at the time that was little, and I actually had left my normal job because, like, I felt I couldn't combine it really well, and I didn't think they appreciated so much having a mother in that position, to be really honest, and had changed into a great new job that was perfect for me to grow, but also to balancing with the family. So I was really happy with that. But an idea that had been growing with us for some time developed, and we were like slowly, you know, growing it and trying out and apply to Y Combinator and stuff. And we knew if we ever wanted to do it, because it's a database, we would need to go full in and fundraise and all the VC stuff happening. And at the time when we got accepted into Techstars, I also went fully into the company, and we decided to go all in. So a little bit of a different story, but it was really a problem we had been seeing for years, which we wanted to solve, and which we kind of tested out with the community on GitHub, see the recognition, and then see if we can make that business case viable, find someone who would believe in it, and then we took the leap together.
So you're part of the 40% who had a really, really strong business idea that just was too good to not follow through with it. I love to hear. Maria, your background, and we mentioned in the beginning a little bit as well, is you're part of like two or actually multiple worlds, like the corporate world with, you know, in digital transformation, and then your startup world. Like, how do the two compare to you? And would you say as a founder it's actually really helpful to go, you know, like to get a corporate experience first and then take that step into the founder's life, or how was your experience with that?
I mean, there's a good and a bad side, of course. I mean, if you join the corporate before, you learn a lot of skills. So I really learned how to do it, what is important, and I never had the pressure that I'm alone with that. So I would say this time made me really strong because I learned from experts how I can do this. And afterwards, on the other hand side, of course, if you join after that as startup, sometimes you need to get out of your head, like, okay, there's no structure needed, and you don't need to like put on all the dots before you go the next step. So I think there are good and bad things, but for me personally, I guess our whole startup is benefiting that I made the corporate way before, because I know exactly how we should start different things, or how we can implement structure. So that helped us a lot, I would say.
And that's why you're also in the knowledge transfer archetype that Julia identified. I'd love to to talk a little bit about one aspect that I always love seeing in the data, not only in this report, but many reports actually show that that women tend to pursue more societal goals or social goals versus, because kind of that purely business goals, which many of the male counterparts and male founders, seem to have, top in mind. Julia, can you share how this manifests in the data and what consequences would be for the evaluation of female-led businesses? And I think you allude to that a little bit in kind of the outlook and the look forward, what that means.
Yeah, so what we see in the data and what you also said, I think a lot of reports already showed before, is that women tend to found more in a societal or with a social interest than men do. And it is also a problem, on the other hand, that there are so many or so few women who study in STEM subjects or who are in the technical sector. So we think that for women, it is often, or for those who haven't found it yet and just think about it, there are two separate words. But we think that it is more important to combine these things because it is most of the time more successful or more profit-oriented if you're in a fast-growing tech industry. So if it gets more clear that also social problems can be solved with technical approaches, we think there will be more women, or we can get more women into this kind of in these industries, actually.
And that pretty much aligns with something that Christina said in her interview, actually. So you said that for you, entrepreneurship is characterized by a societal responsibility, so to shape the future and to give something back. But in many cases, obviously, the big successes that we read about is all about numbers. It's about funding raise, it's about exit, and how do you think about that?
Well, I think the question was what I see as the problems, right? And if I look around myself, it was based on like how society perceives startups and founding a business, and entrepreneurship. If I look around me, and not in this startup bubble, of course, because there's everything great, but if you look around, or like if our children in school say, oh, my mom, she's an entrepreneur or something, that's nothing that is really cool, to be honest. It's more like, okay. And people know that from like TV shows, like where there are people and then they pitch their startup and, one day they want to make the exit and have the money. That's kind of what I feel is perceived all around me if we go outside this bubble. And I think that's a picture that's really, I don't know, it's not true, I think, because people, it might be that there's some that are just have an idea and say, okay, I want to make the money and that's it. And that's fine. I mean, everyone can do whatever he wants. But I think there are so many super great examples, role models, like founders that really want to change things with their company. It's why in the first place they did that. And that's why they started. And that's, I think, what is, to me, actually important. And I don't care so much about, like, will it be like super big or not? I just want to have like the possibility to give something back to society and to make a change, however this is going to work. And that's basically what I meant. Yeah.
Yeah, and this is the perfect segue actually to the next topic. So I wanted to talk a little bit about obstacles, and you mentioned it also right there, role models. As one thing that it seems do we not have enough of them, or do we not have the right ones there? So I'm curious, while there's many things, and you can talk more about that, like in terms of obstacles to overcome. And I think this would kind of totally get beyond the time that we have. I feel like. The importance of role models, which is, also a reason why we created this week-long, series of events, is like to give visibility to founders, right, and to more women out there, because we see and we realize, that this is something where we still have a huge gap. So maybe starting with Maria, like how do you see the importance of role models, and also how do you see yourself as a founder and role model?
For me, that has always been very important, to be honest, because I look at these women, in my case, different ones, one from corporate, one from other parts of life, and I always felt, okay, if they can do it, I can also do it. So what I learned from these people is that I also want to share my experiences to like empower other people to go on the same way. So for example, when I got pregnant, everybody told me like, okay, you are on the corporate way, so how about your career? Why do you do that? And I was always like, there's no problem, to be honest, and I can handle both things. And I also experienced that the people in the corporate give me the time and the space to have a great job and also my family time. So I think it's really important that we not just talk about like, how can you do it, or maybe we should change something, there should be quotes or whatever, we should do something and also tell the people there are success stories where you can see that you can handle all the things. So for me, to have role models is important, of course, but I think it's more important to change something in the market or the ecosystem that we really have a better chance. And so it's not about talking, it's about doing, for me.
Yeah, and maybe Vivian, you were nodding here. What are your thoughts? You agree? Yes.
I totally agree. And I see. So it's a little bit twofold. Sometimes I think like there's so much talk going on about this female stuff. How about you just instead of like especially for corporates or depending, just do it some event or talk about it. How about you do programs, you add numbers, or like VCs, why don't you have a number that says how many female-founded companies you have in your portfolio, and that's a quality standard, or things like this, like hands-on, do something, real measures and real goals that can be measured and will be shared instead of just talking. Even though I must admit now with the Women's Day yesterday and it being a topic for my daughter in school, I thought it's also important, of course, to create the awareness, and especially with the kids growing up, and I see it like children books. There's a lot of changes you need to make to children's books if you want to try to give them a, not a closed mindset that they couldn't be doing anything they want to. Because there's a lot in there that's like just beneath it. That's just like stereotypes. It's always the mom cooking lunch, and it's always the father providing for the family. I'm sorry, it's just like in many, many books, just as a quick example. And also the doctor is male and the nurse is female. And this over and over and over again. I read it in a lot of those books. So I think talking about it and making it clear to her that the new world allows and enables her to earn the same amount of money for the same work and to become anything she wants to. I think that's really helpful too. Yet I do totally agree with you, Maria, that it's mainly about doing something, and we should basically try to cut the talking and do more doing.
Yeah, so maybe I
sorry.
can just underline that, because sometimes you really get the feeling that it's more like a marketing instrument for a lot of people. So they're using like female just to really go with the trend, or to set the trend, I don't know. But it's often, if you look behind the scenes, you can just see, okay, it's not really that there was a change. It is more like a good marketing story.
Right, and I think that's why it's so important to do to as you all said, right, to do both, right? It's like and I think corporates have their part and share. I think the politics, the policy aspect is like what are the support systems that are in place. And also in the beginning, they run, as we do, many programs, and both Maria and Vivian, you've been part of our Immersion for Women Founders programs, and we realize because there's a lot of debate whether we should have dedicated programs to women founders, right? Should it not be all, for any founders? And we just make sure we have a good share of female representation, and it's a constant debate, and it's an important question, But what we really see, regardless, is how important it is to bring women founders together as well, and how powerful it is. And then, you know, the ones who are doing amazing things, you know, try to give them, you know, more visibility and make sure that they can be those role models, right? I think Julia, at the Gründerzeit event, we were asked, you know, like who are the big role models? Is Elon Musk a great role model? You know, I would actually argue, you know, all of you are much better role models, you know, because you're more, you know, it's more realistic, you know, image of a founder, you know, and way more inspiring to see a real person, you know, like not that you mustn't be a real person, but you know what I'm saying is like, you know, someone that is actually a bit more within reach rather than those, you know, totally out of the picture comparisons. So I'm just curious, you know, as we are talking about amazing people, like who are those people that inspire you? Like, do you have, I don't know if they have to be role models, but are there people in your founder lives or journeys that you look at or seek out for advice? And maybe do around for everyone, also including Julia, because this is a question for all of us, I guess. Julia, do you want to start maybe? Is there anyone, like a person that inspires you or that you look at?
It's not really like a specific person, but for me, as you also said, and as in our journey, it comes often up again, it is especially that these founders and these persons have to be realistic. And so for me, the most important people where I look up to are actually very close to me. Maybe like in my company, there are a few women now that are really, really successful. And so there's also a change. Like a few years ago, we had only male bosses actually that lead the business. There's a complete change, and they are really successful and have a complete different kind of how they run our company and how we work all together. So actually, these persons, they're more important for me, or they inspired me more than some maybe out of reach founders or other people in the companies. And that's what we also saw in our survey, is that especially those who have not these straightforward careers, but who have some edges and some failures in between, that they say, oh, we have no role models that fit to us. And I think this is maybe one of the most important things then.
Very wise. Christina, what are your thoughts?
I'm kind of with Julia, and well, I was on a talk last week, and it was the same question: who are your role models? To me, like actually, every person that I can learn from, like if I look at their life, if I look at how they handle things, that's kind of a role model for me, because then I always think, okay, how could I take that into my life? What can I learn from that? And they're not like specific 2 or 3 or 4 people just because they did something great, but it's like, and that's something I try to teach my children. And when I'm as a mentor somewhere, it's like everyone in kind of how they behave, how they do things, how they get things going, they're kind of a role model for other people, and you should never forget that. I think that's super important. So I think it's just, can I learn something from someone, the way they behave or what they do or how they go forward? And then actually that's someone that I really admire for the thing, and doesn't have to be like the whole person, but maybe it's just an aspect on what they are doing. So basically that's actually how it is for me.
So we don't call it names. It's more like we're looking for, you know, like the inspiration that individuals can give us and that we can take from them. And there's actually a question that came from the audience that ties nicely. So the CEO of Bumble, Whitney Wolfert, held her son as she took Bumble public, and you probably remember those pictures of that. Some people loved it, some were critical of it as a photo op. So what is the reaction when you bring up, you know, being a parent as a founder? And is that something you relate to? I mean, obviously we already touched upon that, you know, your role as mothers, but any reactions to that? Either Vivian or Maria, maybe?
Yeah, maybe I can start. So I experience really different things, to be honest with you. So it really depends on the person, and maybe also on the age of the person in front of you. That's what I felt. So it's always relating to if they also have children and know how that feels like, what it is about. And so I mean, mainly everybody thinks it's a good thing, and mothers take care not just of baby, also of the company. So you have a lot of things you learn from being a mother that you can bring into the company, especially in how to lead my team and how to take care of different things, and being responsible. That's also very a good thing. But of course, they know that there's something another thing that takes a lot of your time and a lot of your love. So for me, I have 2 babies, my little one and also the company. So I think it's really a mixture of different things. But the most important thing is that you are really clear with your own situation, that you are strong, and that you really. So I know that it was the right decision for me. So there's no discussion for me about that topic. So I'm just feeling good, and I think people recognize if you are really familiar with your own situation.
Wonderful. There's another question coming from the audience, and I might actually spin that a little bit. So it's actually a nice question to end on, and a common question for panel rounds like this is like, so what would you have wished you have known, or what would have done differently, going back? But maybe what we could do instead is like, what, based on such an experience, what would be kind of your one piece of advice be to other women founders out there starting off? Vivian, what do you think?
Oh, wow, that's a tough one. Let me quickly think. Well, I personally just believe that, and I think that's something you should not forget, that if you make a deliberate choice at the time you make it to the best of your knowledge, you can't blame yourself. And if you would go back and change the choice, you don't know what would have happened. It would be totally different. So because of that, it does not make sense to me to think about going back and changing one thing. It's just like the effects, you wouldn't know. You would be standing somewhere totally different. But I do believe, that you should really take a lot of care to listen to what you really want, to basically listen to your heart in both respects. The company and career, for me, that was always super important. And that also said what I read, who I met, who I was talking to, what I was thinking, because you always live in your bubble. I had no interaction actually with, like families with a lot of kids, moms, all of those topics, because I was highly focused. And I loved my jobs, I loved all that I've done, and I had fun, and I put everything into it. It was great. And for me, it kind of also worked out well because, I have a daughter now, and I'm really happy I have it, and I have my startup. But because of my age, I have experienced people that had more difficulties, for example, with also building a family then. And I do think it's an important life aspect. And I think it's really important to try to get holistic views and to be aware of the social bubble you're living in, and feel yourself and make all of that a deliberate choice, because some of this you can't roll back.
Right. That's a very nice notion to end this conversation on, because we are at time. So thank you all, ladies, for sharing. First of all, thanks, Julia, for sharing the data to set us up in the right way. And then thanks for all of the founders to share a little bit of insights into your founder journey with us today. Thanks for everyone who chose to start your day with us this morning. As mentioned in the beginning, there's more to come, so make sure to check out the other events that are happening this week. In fact, at lunchtime, we have a great panel with Catherine and 3 amazing journalists with Business Insider, Sifted, and Cosmopolitan, talking about how to pitch your startup successfully to media. So that's a super important topic that always comes up. And so make sure you don't miss out. And then tomorrow, we'll have another really exciting conversation with Anna Alex, who's also featured in the report, has said many very true things about failure, about her startup journey from Outfittery to Planetly. So sign up for that one as well. Check out all the other events that we have, and hope to see you soon. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.